Picture this. You're sitting in a twin-engine jet while it's taxiing on the runway, and you hear this pulsing wub-wub-wub sound that keeps fluctuating in volume. Or imagine you open your refrigerator and notice the vibrations from the motor are creating ripples on the surface of a glass of milk. But oddly enough, those ripples are standing completely still instead of moving across the glass.
Now, these everyday mysteries might seem totally unrelated, but they're actually visual and auditory clues to one of the most fascinating phenomena in physics: what happens when complex waves collide. In the real world, waves are rarely just simple, smooth curves, right? They bounce off walls, cross paths, and run into each other, creating incredibly complex patterns. But luckily, the rules governing how these complex waves behave are remarkably simple. By the end of this explainer, you are going to intuitively understand wave superposition, the exact formulas behind standing waves, and how to apply these rules to solve real-world physics problems.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're covering the magic of superposition, constructive versus destructive interference, standing waves and resonance, frequencies, nodes and antinodes, and finally, the physics of beats. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. The magic of superposition.
Okay, so when you look at waves in the ocean or sound waves in a crowded room, they can look incredibly chaotic. But really, they're just simple waves adding together. And this brings us to a foundational rule called superposition. This is simply the phenomenon that occurs when two or more waves arrive at the exact same point in space. They superimpose their disturbances on one another. Remember, every wave disturbance corresponds to a force, and in physics, forces add. So if the disturbances are along the same line, the resulting wave is literally just the addition of the individual wave's amplitudes. It's simple math.
Moving on to Part 2, constructive versus destructive interference. Now that we know waves just add their amplitudes together, let's look at what happens in two very special, pure cases when identical waves collide. First up, pure constructive interference. This happens when two identical waves arrive at the exact same point precisely in phase. Their crests are perfectly aligned and their troughs are perfectly aligned. Because the disturbances add up, the resulting wave has twice the amplitude of the individual waves. It literally doubles in size. On the flip side, we have pure destructive interference. This is when two identical waves arrive exactly out of phase, meaning the crest of one wave perfectly aligns with the trough of another. Because they're pulling in exact opposite directions, the resulting amplitude is mathematically zero. They completely cancel each other out.
So you might be wondering, how does this actually apply to everyday life? Well, imagine you hook up a brand new stereo system in your room. You walk to one corner and the music sounds incredibly dull and quiet, but you move a few feet over and it's excessively loud. Why? Because you have at least two speakers pumping out sound waves, and those waves are bouncing all over your walls. As they cross paths, they superimpose. In the loud areas, the waves are arriving mostly in phase, creating constructive interference. In the dull areas, they're arriving out of phase, destructively interfering and canceling the sound right out.
All right, Part 3, standing waves and resonance.
Let's transition from traveling sound waves in a room to waves that don't seem to travel at all. Think back to that glass of milk vibrating in your refrigerator. The ripples on that milk are what we call standing waves. They oscillate up and down, but they don't appear to move across the surface. How does this happen? Well, it starts with the refrigerator motor creating a wave that travels across the milk. That wave hits the side of the glass and reflects backward. Now you have two identical waves moving in opposite directions, right through each other. As they cross, they continuously alternate between constructive and destructive interference. The result is a single waveform that appears perfectly frozen in place, a standing wave. Wait, this next point is absolutely crucial. Standing waves aren't just some quirky trick in a glass of milk. They're literally a matter of life and death in civil engineering. During an earthquake, you might see a mid-sized building completely collapse, while a much taller building right next door remains perfectly intact. Why is that? Because the earthquake's driving frequency might perfectly match the natural vibration frequency of that mid-sized building. The building's specific height matches the exact condition required to set up a standing wave, creating this devastating resonance that shakes it apart. The taller building doesn't fit that exact mathematical condition, so it survives.
Which brings us to Part 4, frequencies, nodes, and antinodes.
To understand exactly how building heights or even string instruments mathematically fit these conditions, we need to break down the anatomy of a standing wave. Imagine holding a jump rope while your friend holds the other end. If you both start shaking it up and down to create a standing wave, you'll notice specific points along the rope. Let's define these terms exactly as you'd see them on a professor's chalkboard.
The points on that jump rope that do not move at all are called nodes. In a standing wave, a node is where the wave disturbance is 0. Because you and your friend are holding the ends of the rope tightly, those fixed ends must always be nodes. The rope literally cannot move there. And the points on the rope where the swinging is at its absolute widest, those are called antinodes. These are your locations of maximum amplitude.
Let's connect this to real-life music. The lowest frequency a string can play, let's say on a guitar, is called the fundamental frequency. Step 1. Because the string is fixed at both ends, the longest wave that fits between those two nodes is exactly twice the length of the string, so your fundamental wavelength is 2 times L. Step 2. To calculate the fundamental frequency, the actual note you hear, you divide the wave speed by that wavelength. This brilliantly illustrates why tuning a guitar actually works. When you tighten the tuning peg, you increase the tension on the string. This increases the wave speed, which fundamentally raises the frequency of the note. And step 3. Any higher frequencies that fit perfectly on that string are exact mathematical multiples of that fundamental note. We call those overtones or harmonics.
And finally, part 5, the physics of beats.
Let's bring this full circle back to our very first hook, that fluctuating loudness of a twin-jet engine taxiing on the runway. We've talked a lot about identical waves, but what happens when the waves are slightly different? When you have two engines spinning at slightly different speeds, they produce waves of similar but non-identical frequencies. Because the frequencies don't perfectly match, the sound waves constantly drift in and out of phase with each other. 1 second, they line up perfectly for constructive interference, making a loud sound. A split second later, they drift out of phase for destructive interference, making it quiet. This continuous shifting creates a pulsing variation in volume, and we measure this using something called the beat frequency. The beat frequency is the rate of that warble, the exact frequency at which the volume goes up and down. Mathematically, it's incredibly simple. It is just the absolute difference between the two original frequencies.
Let's break down the math step by step so you don't fall into a really common student trap here. There are 2 different things you hear when beats happen. Step 1, you have 2 similar frequencies superimposing. Step 2, the actual pitch or note your ear perceives is the exact average of those 2 frequencies. But step 3, the rate at which that pitch gets louder and softer, the pulsing beat itself, is the absolute difference between them. So you hear the average pitch, but it's pulsing at the beat frequency.
Let me give you a number. 256. This isn't just a random number, it's the frequency in hertz of a tuning fork commonly used by professional piano tuners. This is basically the perfect real-world application of beats.
When a piano tuner strikes that 256 Hz tuning fork and simultaneously strikes a piano key, they listen closely. Let's say they hear the volume pulsating exactly 2 times per second. That means the beat frequency is 2 Hz. Based on our formula, the absolute difference between the tuning fork and the piano string is due. Therefore, the piano string is currently vibrating at either 254 Hz or 258 Hz. The tuner then tightens or loosens the string, listening to those beats. If the pulses get faster, ups, they're going the wrong way. They adjust the tension until the beat frequency drops all the way down to 0. When the warbling stops entirely, the frequencies are perfectly matched, and the piano is perfectly in tune.
Let's test this with a quick pop quiz straight from a physics textbook. If a plane's twin engines produce an average frequency of 4100 Hz and you hear a slow pulsing beat frequency of exactly half a Hertz, what are their individual frequencies? Think about the formulas. The average is 4100 and they are exactly 0.5 Hz apart. That means one engine must be 0.25 Hz above the average and the other must be 0.25 Hz below. So the engines are spinning at 4099.75 Hz and 4100.25 Hz.
So what is the big takeaway here? Our world is full of incredibly complex waves, but they're entirely governed by the simple mathematical addition of superposition. When identical waves reflect back on themselves, they create the nodes and antinodes of standing waves that tune our instruments and test the structural integrity of our skyscrapers. And when frequencies are just slightly mismatched, they create that beautiful, pulsating mathematical phenomenon we know as beats. We've seen how simple wave disturbances combining together can possess enough force to collapse a concrete building or bring a massive piano into perfect harmony, but it begs a massive follow-up question. If wave disturbances are really just forces adding together, how do we actually calculate the raw sheer power of that energy traveling through space? How do we mathematically measure wave intensity? Well, that's exactly what we'll